Hello. Today I would like to explain the simple present verb tense. We are going to look at some common verbs, why we use the simple present, how we use it, frequency adverbs, and some common errors that make the verb tense challenging to learn. First, let's look at the verb to be. In the simple present, the verb to be has three different forms. I am, you are, he, she, and it is, and then we come back to are. We are, and they are. This is why the verb to be is an exception. The verb to have follows a more regular rule. I have, you have, he, she, it has, we have, they have. We see that we put the S on the third person singular. Do is also what we call a regular verb in the simple present. I do, you do, he, she, or it does, we do, and they do. Once again, we see that we have an S, in this case an ES, on our verb in the third person singular. Why do we use the simple present? We use it to talk about facts. Sherry teaches in a high school. That is a fact. We use it to talk about general truths. The sun rises in the morning. We also look at habitual actions. Marcus jogs every day. We can use it to discuss customs. We celebrate Thanksgiving in October. It's important to look at the verb to be since it is a verb as of exception. In the affirmative structure we looked at just a moment ago. I am, you are, he, she, or it is, we are, and they are. To make it negative, we add the adverb not. I am not, you are not, she is not, we are not, they are not. We can also make a contraction and say you aren't or you're not, etc. To make a question, we invert the verb and the subject. So, am I? Where are you? Is he, she, or it? Where are we, or are we, for example? Or are they? Why are they? We use the verb to be to discuss age. I am 27 years old. She is 26. We also use it to look at emotions or states. He is scared. They are tired. Size and shape. My house is round. For hunger or thirst, we use the verb to be. I am hungry. He is thirsty. For temperature and time, it is late. What time is it? There are other uses, of course, for the verb to be. These are just some basic ones. We also use the verb to be for the expressions of existence. There is and there are. We use there is for a singular noun or a non-count noun. There is one person in line. Or why is there no electricity? Electricity is what we consider to be a non-count noun. We use the expression there are for plural nouns. There are 3 students in the room. Why aren't there any chairs in here? In this case, my are is negative. Why aren't? Or there aren't enough computers. For all other verbs in the simple present tense, we add an S on the third person singular. So, for every subject except he, she, or it, we don't transform the verb. I work, I play, I study, I watch. But once we find the subject pronoun he, she, or it, we must add an S to the verb in the affirmative form. He works, he plays, he studies, he watches. If you look at the spelling rules, if you have a vowel plus the letter Y, we add the letter S. For example here, vowel plus the letter Y, we add an S. But if you have a consonant, like the letter D, plus the letter Y, we change the Y to I and add ES. So study becomes studies. If your verb ends in ss, sh, ch, or x, we add es in the third person singular. He watches. To make all other verbs except the verb to be negative in the simple present tense, you must conjugate an auxiliary verb. And the auxiliary verb for simple present verbs is do. So I do not work. I do not study. You do not work. You do not study. With third person singular, of course, the verb, the auxiliary verb, has an S on it. So she doesn't work, she does not study, etc. For all other verbs except the verb to be, when we make questions, again, we must have an auxiliary verb. And again, the auxiliary is the verb to do. So do I work? Or I could say, where do I work? Do you work? Where do you work? Does he work? Again, my subject pronoun is he. It could also be she or it, in which case my auxiliary is does. Where does he work? Remember that the auxiliary do goes before the subject, do or does, and then the verb goes back to the base form. So what that means is I do not put an S on my verb. There are some words that can indicate to you when to use the simple present tense. These are called frequency adverbs. Always, frequently, generally, occasionally, sometimes, often, usually, never. After the verb to be, we put a frequency adverb. She is often late. We notice that it goes after the verb to be. But when we use other verbs, we put the frequency adverb before. He usually arrives on time. When we have an auxiliary in our sentence, like do or can, etc., the frequency adverb follows that auxiliary. He can't always help. And when we ask questions, the frequency adverb follows the subject. Do you usually study for tests? Some common problems that people have when using the simple present is that, first of all, people forget to put an S on the third person singular, and it is also important to say the S, to pronounce the S in English. He lives. She thinks. It snows. She watches. Another common difficulty with the simple present is making a negative sentence and using the correct auxiliary. So I would say, I don't have, I do not have. She doesn't know. And the question structure is also challenging. Where does he work? How often do you have an appointment at the dentist? If you do not know how to make questions in English, please watch the capsule called Quasvo. That will explain. So, good luck. I encourage you to watch some videos and do the exercises associated with them. And of course, you can practice. So, thank you for listening.